everybody, it's Jason. How's it going? We're back for another episode of Dubious Knowledge. And this month, we are talking about Old Deadeye. The old elk head himself, Mr. Elky, Mr. Horns, Mr. Longbow.
Wow, Jason.
As usual, the lovely Cori is here to talk about gods and goddesses. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm a little punchy today. I've been cooped up. It's been cold in Minnesota, and I'm guessing it's been cold in Toronto too.
Yes, very.
Yeah, it is. It is real cold. We currently don't have our third Mike. Speaking of cold, he is currently in traffic on his way home to make it for this recording, but he got caught up in a snowstorm, so his drive back home to make it to this recording has been caught up, so he will be joining us as soon as he possibly can. But until then, we are joined by a very special guest, somebody who also knows all about the cold here in Minnesota. We are joined by Emily Campbell. How are you?
Hello, I am doing pretty well, staying as warm as I can.
Yeah, same. Very much the same. It is. Yeah, we're a bunch of old folks because we're talking about the weather. I mean, but yeah, Emily, you're joining us for the big reason is that you played a cleric of Erastil.
Yeah, she was a really fun character, and I played her in our Hideous Laughter podcast during our Cori and Crown adventure.
I don't remember that character. That is an inside joke, friends.
Yeah, so you're joining us from the Hideous Laughter podcast. This is the third special guest we've had from Hideous Laughter. Steve joined us when we talked about Pharasma, because he played Matumbe. Griff joined us when we talked about Urgathoa as the GM for both Cori and Crown and Curse of the Crimson Throne. And now you're joining us from the Cori and Crown campaign. So tell us a little bit about you, Emily, and then about the characters, the shows you're on Hideous Laughter.
Yeah, sure. I started playing Pathfinder, probably 9 or so years ago now. Back when I was in graduate school, a good friend started up a game, and Steve and I and Brooks joined, and we made more friends, and it grew into the podcast that we do now. So the whole network that we have is Hideous Laughter Productions, and we do several shows within that. So I'm on the Hideous Laughter podcast for our Cori and Crown adventure in Bestow Curse, where we are playing through Curse of the Crimson Throne in 2nd edition. I'm also on our Linked Legacy shows, where we play through different modules of different editions. And then I'm also on the next season of the Hideous Laughter podcast, where we're playing through Skulls and Shackles.
Yeah, pirate campaign. That's what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and I definitely had to listen to your episode on Besmara so I could get some inspiration for my character on that show.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been chatting with Griff quite a bit about the pirate campaign, and I'm very excited for you folks, and I've been loving the episodes so far. I'm 2 episodes behind, but took a little bit of a holiday break, so I'm catching up now. But yeah, your Tengu is great, by the way. I love the Tengu. But yeah, we are here to talk about Old Deadeye. So before we get into Erastil, let's have the quick basics breakdown from Cori.
Alrighty. Erastil, otherwise known as Old Deadeye, as Jason has said a couple of times already.
Not Mr.
Also,
Elkhead?
not Mr. Elkhead, but Elk Father. Estig the Hunter and Stag God are his other titles. He's one of the oldest human deities still worshipped in the Inner Sea region. His religion dates back to before the Age of Darkness, when small farming communities and hunter-gatherers prayed to him for bountiful harvests and successful hunts. He leads his followers by example and good deeds rather than with flowery rhetoric. His edicts are to care for your home and family, fulfill your duties, keep the peace, and protect the community. His anathema is abandon your home in a time of need, choose yourself over your community, tarnish your reputation, and tell lies. Areas of concern are family, farming, hunting, and trade. His pre-master alignment was lawful good. He allowed followers of lawful good, neutral good, and lawful neutral. First edition domains were animal, community, law, good, and plant, with subdomains of arcan, cooperation, education, family, feather, fur, growth, and home. In second edition, his domains are earth, family, nature, and wealth, which seems odd to me, but okay. Alternative domain of duty. Favored weapon is a longbow. And his holy symbol is a stylized longbow.
Yeah. So, first off, when you were rolling up your character, Emily, what drew you to wanting to play a cleric of Erastil?
Yeah, and when I was coming up with this character, I had a lot of ideas kind of swirling around on how she would be integrated into the campaign, and kind of picking a class that was well suited for the adventure and I thought would be fun to tell her story. So for my character Freya, I wanted to play a cleric to have some good positive energy to throw around in a very undead heavy campaign. And reading through different cleric archetypes in first edition, one of them is Stoic Caregiver, and that actually allows you to split your channeling ability where you can both harm and heal at the same time. And I thought that would come in handy and sounded like a very interesting ability to have as a cleric. And then kind of developing her character further, the information on Stoic Caregiver fits in well with Erastil, who is, kind of very traditional, stuck in his ways, but is there to help. And, is going to, a big tenet of his is making sure you're protecting and caring for your community. So it fit well with the Stoic Caregiver and her background and backstory, without giving too much away. She was a midwife and helped kind of travel from community to community, helping those communities grow, protecting women and children. That just fit really well with Erastil's tenets. And so it kind of worshipping Erastil fit well with the story that I wanted to have for my character. And her backstory, her kind of call to adventure. I don't think this will spoil too much of the story, but she loses her family in a fairly tragic fashion, and that's what propels her and kind of gets her on her adventure and makes her leave the family that she had behind. So again, I thought it fit in well here with some of the tenets.
And not to mention, she was a dwarf.
Yes.
So the whole stoicism thing is just like kind of ingrained in that ancestry.
Hard work, making sure you're doing honest work, working the land. Fits in well.
For sure. And I think we'll put a pin in that, in the idea of the traveling Erastilian, because that was a thing that came up that I found super interesting when I was reading the text. And yeah, we can come back to that, but yeah, it's that is really cool, and I can see where the inspiration for Erastil did come from, and I like that. The thing, one of the things that I thought was really cool while reading it was this whole idea of what, and to your point too, Emily, was this idea that Erastil doesn't really care about these big crusades, these massive, acts of heroism, these like grand plans to like rid the world of evil and rid the world of chaos. It's the small things. It's like the small community. It's the small adventuring party. It's the little things that matter to him, not the big bombastic, gigantic crusades against demons or these big heroic adventures. He really likes the small community, the small parties, the small families, the little things.
Yeah, one of the things I really like that touches on that, Jason, is when I was reading about his realm. Like, as a lawful good deity, or formerly lawful good deity, he resides in heaven, as most of those deities do. Torag resides in the mountain of heaven. Iomedae resides on the mountain of heaven. Erastil also resides in heaven, in the fourth level of heaven, known as Requies. He has a village there called the Summerlands, and it is specifically the spot in heaven where his followers and those that are lawful good but don't want to be part of the forever war go. So, like, heaven is forever at war with both hell and the abyss, trying to stem back the tide of evil and chaos. And there's just this little spot in heaven where people that don't want to be in a forever war get to go, instead of being conscripted into the Planetar army or whatever. So I found that really, really interesting, and a nice little thing for the lawful good people that don't want to continue the fight forever and ever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
It's nice to have that place to retire, where you could have peace and just enjoy your small village.
And it's the Summerlands. I'm guessing it's probably warm and cozy, and at least that's the name.
Well, and like that's the time of year that Erastil wants you to think of when you think of him. Because,
right,
like, he is the god of farming. And you don't farm in the winter. So from late spring to early autumn is Erastil's time, which is why his month is smack dab in the middle of that stretch, corresponding to our July.
Right. Exactly. I think to your point about the idea of the seasons and him being the god of farming, I do want to go back to that because it says here that he is the god who not only does he teach his followers how to read the seasons, how to know when to sow, when to reap, how to tell livestock whether they're sick and whatnot. He's also the one who believes that cooperation is what leads to friendship and safety. So again, to the point that Emily was making, this idea about being able to go around and shaking people's hands and working together is what provides the community that safety net and builds those bonds and can create that sense of community, but also that sense of protection, which is something that I also really liked. And it's not something that, Torag we talked about. His idea of protection is building these walls and these sturdy walls and these shields, and that is how he embodies the concept of protection, is creating these indestructible walls, where Erastil's concept of protection is the people and the community, which is really cool and very different.
Yeah, a lot of that is reflected in the holy text and also the code for paladins as well. So I thought it was really interesting learning more about Erastil, that his holy text is more like a farmer's almanac. Like, it tells you when to plant things, how to grow in your community, which seems, it's just so practical. It's a holy text, but it's also like, here's how to have your community thrive.
And talking about the holy text just reminded me of something from Wrath of the Righteous. There is a heretical holy text that is mentioned in that book about how a community should never be more than 27 members, and if your community ever gets to be more than 27 members, it is your duty as an Erastilan to cull the herd so that you are back down to 27 members.
Whoa. What? Was there significance to 27? Where did that come from?
I'm trying to remember the specifics. It did give a significance to it, if I remember right. Let me pull it up. I forgot all about that holy text.
I do like the verbiage too of "call the herd," because that's something that would be an Erastilian language.
Let's see.
Well, while you're looking that up too, real quick, he also loves the idea of customs. So customs and traditions are something that Erastil also really enjoys, especially ones that can strengthen community bonds and family bonds. So, weddings and baby showers and those kinds of things are things that he really enjoys, and because it provides an opportunity for families to come together and to strengthen those bonds. So again, traditionalism.
I had the number wrong. It was 53, not 27. I don't know where I got 27 in my head. But it is a text known as the Stag King's Bride, a near heretical Erastilian holy book bound in green leather. It is an account of a priestess of Erastil named Delamere, who taught that cities were among the greatest blights humanity had ever conceived, and that any settlement of more than 53 citizens was inherently evil. According to Delamere's bizarre and nigh incomprehensible teachings, the 54th person in any settlement has an unusually high chance of being a traitor to the family, based in part on the theory that a family of 5 lies at the center of 6 families of 5. Grandparents, cousins, and nieces and nephews. The 54th person, therefore, would be outside of the family and thus a danger. Delamere's teachings were controversial, but in smaller towns of northeastern Sarkoris, they gained enough popularity that when she died, she was buried in a sizable tomb.
Wow.
Gross. Gross.
That's really intense.
Yeah. Just because, and that does go to show that, that you can take the faith a little bit too far, but Erastil himself also dislikes cities. He thinks that Abadar is full of himself and got a little bit too big for his britches.
It's another few steps, though, to start saying that the 54th person is going to be a traitor to your community. But I could see how the logic could get you there.
Yeah, we'll get into Erastil's relationships with the other gods, because I have a couple things I want to say about that too. Especially some revelations about his relationships with Desna, which I was kind of taken aback by. But anyway, we'll get there.
Yeah. But in other relationships to deities, not the other core 20 deities, because as Jason said, we'll get there. But one of the things that was a puzzle for a long time on the Paizo boards and in the Pathfinder community was, hey, why does this god of family, this traditionalist who wants you to just settle down and raise a family, why does this god of family not have a family?
Yeah.
And for years people speculated on this on the message boards until we finally got an answer in Runes of Aslant when they published a small section on the gods of Aslant, which includes some of the gods that we know and love, like Desna, Grotus, and a few other familiar names, along with some new names that have since vanished from history. One of the new names that has since vanished from history is the goddess Jada, who was the Aslanti goddess of agriculture, and she was Erastil's wife.
Mm-hmm.
And so he does have a wife, but she's not widely worshipped anymore, and we never see or hear from her in modern times. She was worshipped up until Earthfall, and even shortly after Earthfall, a lot of her followers tried to recultivate the Earth after the Cataclysm. And their faith in her is what got them through the Cataclysm. But really, she's kind of sort of vanished, and it makes... There's still a little mystery there of where is she? And my theory here is there wasn't an Aslanti write-up for Erastil himself. So we don't know what his role was in ancient Aslan. My theory is that Erastil hasn't always been the god of farming. And that when his wife Jada died, he inherited that part of her portfolio.
That was my immediate thought too. That something happened to her, and he took on the agriculture.
And it would
aspect.
explain why he is seen without a family anymore. Like,
Yeah, and there's even a passage in Lost Omens, Gods and Magic, that says Erastil is thought by most to have his own family, but he rarely speaks of them to his followers or involves his family directly in his faith, as he wishes to avoid worshippers becoming distracted by the gods' relationships. Mortals should view their own families, whatever their makeup, as sacred rather than focus on the families of a god simply because that family is divine. So he's purposefully keeping his family out of his faith. So he's intentionally keeping what happened to his wife and potential children out of his faith, out of any knowledge from his followers.
which also kind of ties back into the being a very traditional, conservative minded individual. His family is his, and he wants to keep them close to him and not share them with the world.
Exactly. Yeah. So that is fascinating because he does come off like his whole appearance, the way he's depicted, is much more hunter than it is gatherer.
Mm-hmm.
It is very much more hunter. You can see that he's depicted as this male wearing leathers and wielding a bow and an axe, often with an elk's head, sometimes tall, and generally human. But if you talk to halflings, they'll claim him as halfling, which I found fascinating, because there's because the texts claim that he appears as Ulfin, which is basically Golarion Viking, but halflings say that he's halfling. So make of that what you will.
I feel like halflings say that every god is halfling, though.
That's also true.
I think that is interesting, though, for a god who can appear differently to different groups, maybe, to fit in more with their community so they can connect more with him as, he's a god, so not one of their own, but like be more tied directly to their community that they have.
Yeah,
and it wouldn't be the first time a deity has done that in Golarion either, because Desna hasn't always looked like an elf with butterfly wings. And
right, and
in the future will not look like an elf with butterfly wings again.
Yeah, and Sarenrae hasn't always had dark skin, and even in the Mwangi, Sarenrae has appeared as an old woman. God, grandmother, I forget, grandmother something. But yeah, and the thing too about Erastil is that there's very little artwork of him, because it's very uncommon, as Erastilians don't like to put their focus and time and energy into art. They would rather focus on tilling the land and hunting. So you don't often get artwork. And the very little artwork that is mostly just wood carvings. What you would expect, you know?
You know, and like that is actually one of my hang-ups with his faith is he comes off as very anti-fun. Like, he's all about hard work and hard work and hard work and hard work. And, you know, he doesn't want his followers to indulge in recreational pastimes because recreational pastimes dig into the time you could be working. And that just rubs me the wrong way because you need to have a good work-life balance.
Yeah, I agree. There are aspects of Erastil and his faith that are flawed. And so you can sometimes work with those to tie in those to the character, if that's the character you're wanting to play. Like when I was playing Freya, she was a stoic caregiver who was all about putting all of her effort into, originally saving women and children and then helping a friend's child and then, trying to save the whole world. But you can take sometimes those oddities or things and turn them into something unique for your character to dig into.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think and that's a really good point too, that coming at this from the perspective as, as an outside player, there you can definitely, to your point, take a piece of this thing that, we all would agree is flawed, but use it and twist it and massage it in such a way to create an interesting aspect to a PC. Because, PCs are a way for players to investigate and to expose ideas and to really focus in and hone in on, and what's the word I'm thinking of here? I can't think of it, but to look at different areas that you normally wouldn't be able to. I myself would not. Would I be able to dedicate 99% of my life to work? Hell no.
Agreed.
But I could take a PC. I could create a PC in Pathfinder who is 99% hard work, and try to role play that character, which I 100% don't agree with. But as I could try to role play something like that, and see what it could be like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's definitely different levels of dedication to, following the letter of the law of his edicts for the characters as well. When I was playing a cleric, I definitely had that in mind, but, at some points you have to give and take to keep the party progressing, and even for my character, accepting boons from other gods and maybe diversifying a little bit more. So kind of take it and make it work for the adventure that you're playing in. You don't have to take everything for your character, because that's not always as fun for everybody around the table.
Right. I mean, we were talking about Rovagug last episode, and how if you wanted to play somebody who worshipped Rovagug, one of Rovagug's edicts is to destroy things. And it's just like, well, does that mean every treasure piece you're going to find you got to destroy? Well, it's just like, okay, well, you could take that concept of destroy things that you find and massage it in such a way that would make it able to fit into a party, and still be able to play a worshiper of Rovagug, or I'm sure Cori has ways of playing a devout worshiper of Iomede that doesn't have a stick up their ass all the time. You know, we haven't done that episode yet, but
I also take a lot of inspiration from, Wrath of the Righteous is the computer game's version of Sela, who is a very devout follower of Iomede, but also likes to tie one on and get a little bit too hammered sometimes. So, like, you can have a happy balance.
Exactly. Now, one of my favorite things to talk about, and I was happy that they actually had a passage for Old Deadeye about this, is how does this god appear to their followers? Oftentimes we talked about how Sarenrae likes to show her approval by growing sunflowers. She's the goddess of the sun, Or Desna, the goddess of dreams, likes to appear to her followers in dreams. Or, Besmara likes to appear to her followers through, sea creatures and, good tides when they're traveling and whatnot. Well, for Old Deadeye, he shows his approval, as you would imagine, through bountiful harvests, mild weather, and the appearance of straight paths. But as you can also imagine, he doesn't like direct intervention in helping folks because he doesn't want to encourage laziness. So this is where he kind of parallels Torag a little bit, where Torag very, very rarely interacts with his followers. Same thing with Erastil. He very rarely interacts with his followers when it comes to that kind of stuff. But here's the part that I really thought was cool. His anger, however, is usually shown by punishing his followers who betray him by turning them into a pig or a fruit tree. And I couldn't figure out why a fruit tree. Do either of you have any idea?
I do have an idea. Because as a fruit tree, you are giving to your community every year by being a bountiful harvest that the community can subsist upon.
Okay, that makes sense.
If you're going to be lazy, he'll turn you into something more productive.
Okay.
The pig is more of a one-time harvest, and the fruit tree is a forever harvest.
Okay, yeah. I took the pig as if you're gonna be something that's lazy, and you're gonna be a lazy pig who's just gonna be. You're gonna be fine. You're gonna really be lazy, and here, go play in the mud and be something gross. But now I see what you're saying. It's like you're gonna be a one-time bountiful thing, or something that is seasonally bountiful. Now I get it. Thank you. And then there's also a legend. There's always a legend, but there's a legend that mothers tell misbehaving children that Erastil will transform them, and most communities have at least one small, gnarled tree that local legend claims was once an especially unruly child.
Old Deadeye's gonna get you.
Yep. If you don't shape up, Old Deadeye's going to turn you into what Calvin used to be. And Calvin, 35 years ago, he didn't listen to his mother.
Wow.
Yeah.
On the topic of the encouraging hard work and discouraging other pastimes thing, I did find it interesting that his temples are usually set up more as workshops than actual temples. Like they're not meant to sit down in and have a sermon. They are meant to gather as a community and put in some hard work. So there will be like leatherworking tables and crafting tables of all sorts to provide for the community. And then his temples also serve as like the town hall and as a gathering spot for the community for important events in the community. So I did find that fun and took a lot of inspiration for that when creating the map of the Sandpoint Cathedral, which has a wing dedicated to Erastil.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool too that to that point they're usually workshops and they're usually built in longhouses. So again, going with this like Viking Kelid Ulfin theme, they're generally longhouses, which again to your point, Cori, are multi-purpose. Longhouses traditionally were used for, for everything. They were feasting halls, they were workshops, they were everything. So this idea that it's a multi-purpose area is very Erastilian. The point I wanted to get at about this that I really disliked here is that the sermons at these temples and shrines, you're not supposed to sit down. Like, you're supposed to stand during that entire mass, that entire sermon. Sitting during, and I'm going to quote here, quote, "Sitting during the faith's short service, while not taboo, is looked down upon for all but the elderly or infirm, and even they bring their own chairs or mats," end quote. So even the old and the sick aren't allowed to sit down, and they have to bring their own mats if they want to sit. Like, that to me, that rubbed me wrong. Again, it's the whole traditionalist thing. I get it, but it is what it is, I guess.
That just sounds really uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, ties into the more traditional, more historic way of doing things. Fits in with that.
Yeah, for sure. But again, it's just, we're looking at it from a 21st century perspective, but still, it rubbed me the wrong way, and I'm just like, oh.
Well, and there's a lot of that with Erastil, going back to his original entries, because I've talked on this show before about how the original source of lore for all of the deities was in the Adventure Path line. Every second and fifth book of an Adventure Path, starting with Adventure Path number 2, the Skinsaw Murders, through, if I remember right, it was the second book of Shattered Star, had an article on one of the core deities. So they did 2 core deities every 6 books, working their way through all 20, with an exception of during Carrying Crown, they only did 1 article because the other article they did was for the Great Old Ones.
Oh, gotcha. Yep.
which is why it wasn't a nice even number when they got to Toreg finally in Shattered Star number 2. But for the most part, what they did is they published these 6-page articles in the adventure paths, and then they put out their big Book of Gods, the Inner Sea Gods book, the first edition hardcover involving deities. And for the most part, they just reprinted the 6-page article that was in the adventure path into Inner Sea Gods. That way you didn't have to buy every adventure path to get all the articles. You could get them all in one spot. And for the most part, they reprinted them pretty much as is. The exception to that is Erastil. They almost completely rewrote Erastil's article because there was conflict between two creators at Paizo over how to portray Erastil. The first being Erastil's original creator, which was creative director James Jacobs. Erastil is from James's original homebrew. He's one of the gods that James ported into Golarion, along with Desna and Sarenrae and a bevy of others. So James has specific ideas on what he wants Erastil to be. The man who wrote all of the one-y god articles for the adventure paths was Sean K. Reynolds. And Sean wrote the Erastil article during Kingmaker, while most of the rest of the Paizo staff was focusing on the launch of Pathfinder 1st Edition, because Kingmaker was the second adventure path of 1st Edition. So there wasn't really a lot of editorial oversight on the Erastil article when it went out. And because of that, the notions of how to represent Erastil in that article were vastly different than what James Jacobs had wanted. And the Erastil that was published in Rivers Run Red, the second book of the Kingmaker Adventure Path, was presented as very misogynistic and very, very, very traditionalist. That since has been very massaged out, starting with Inner Sea Gods, followed by his article in Lost Omens, Gods and Magic. They've really done a good job of trying to work away from that original depiction. But if you go back and read that original article, it's shocking how brutally misogynistic it comes across.
Yeah, especially for if you're aware of how Paizo operates as a company today. It's you'd be aghast that they would have allowed something like that to be printed. It's
also pretty at odds with having a good aligned deity, and I know we're moving away from alignments, but it doesn't make sense to me that you could hold that view and be good. Like those two things don't go together in my mind. So I'm really glad that they've changed him to what it is now. So I would still say he has flaws, and more fun flaws can work into your game. Not everything needs to make its way into the game from the real world. Some of that stuff can stay out.
Right.
Like, oh God, I had a train of thought and I lost it.
Yes. So while you're thinking of that, Cori, I'll just quick. So I'm not going to go back to the original article. I'll go to the Inner Sea Gods article, and then I will read one passage from the Inner Sea Gods article, and then I will read the parallel passage from the Lost Omens Gods and Magic article. So you can see what we're talking about when we say that things have been massaged out even further. And then you can do some 1 and 1 makes 2 on what you can assume the original article said. So actually let's turn that around. Actually erase that. Okay, I'll just do what I said I was originally going to do. So let me read the Inner Sea Gods passage. Quote, Erastil is very pro-marriage, seeing it as the proper way to create families, and frowning on those who would bend or break the sacred bonds with adultery or divorce. All right? If you can read between the lines, the proper way, marriage is the proper way to create families. Now let me read the parallel passage. From Lost Omens, Gods and Magic. Erastil sees building families as a goal for all people. Those who cannot bear children should still be ready to take in those who need a family, and his followers encourage those who remain single to act as surrogate parents and role models for children. He values traditions that build families even when they are viewed as quaint by others, but he is willing to accept new traditions as long as they strengthen families rather than weakening them.
Yeah.
If you can now, if you follow that progression, follow it backwards, and you can see what the original passage, the original write-up, was very likely what it very likely said.
Yeah. And we don't need to go into that other than to say
Exactly.
that it was very misogynistic, and it's
yeah,
good that they have moved him away from it.
Yeah, I think this makes him and his faith easier to build into a campaign and have characters that worship him, and you can, tell a good story with it. He's still traditional and, stuck in his ways, but in a more encompassing manner that's more fun to play with.
Exactly. Yeah, he's the grumpy grandpa who will still wear a pride shirt even though he's really grumpy. All that being said, all of that, everything we've said so far, the write-up still says Erastil is not likely to have adventurers. He is one of the gods that produces the fewest adventurers out of all the gods, which I found fascinating. He's a lawful god. He used to be a lawful good god. He has a paladin code, and yet they specifically say that Erastil produces fewer adventurers than many other gods.
Well, because he's all about staying home and protecting your small community. Like
he's a
it's
hobbit.
At odds with his very nature to go out and find adventure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, as I was reading about it, I was like, he is the perfect hobbit deity. Like, if this was Middle Earth,
which is why
he would be the hobbit. Probably. You're right. Probably.
Speaking of the Paladin Code, he does have one. The Paladins of Erastil are gruff, strict traditionalists, much like their deity. They seek to preserve the integrity of rural life and communities. Their tenets are, my community comes first and I will contribute to it all that I can. If I don't give something back, who will? I must offer the poor in my community assistance, but I may not do the work for them. Instead, I must teach them to contribute to the settlement. It is only through cooperation that a community grows stronger. When danger threatens, I am not a fool. I seek first to make the weak and innocent make sure the weak and innocent are safe, and then I will quell the danger. I keep to the old ways, the true ways. I am not seduced by the lure of money or power. I remember that true honor comes from within, not from accolades of others, which is why I think wealth is a weird domain for him.
Yeah.
I remember that reputation is everything. Mine is pure and upstanding, and I will repair it if it is broken or tarnished. I stand by my decisions and live so that none shall have cause to blame me. I show respect to my elders, for they have done much. I show respect to the young, for they have much left to do. I show respect to my peers, for they carry the load, and I shall carry it with them. I like that one. I like that one a lot.
Mhm.
It's very Samwise Gamgee. Speaking
And then
of hobbits.
I am honest, trustworthy, and stable. If I must leave my lands and community before I go, I ensure that they will be tended to in my absence. Even when duty calls, my duties to my home come first. Letting them lapse makes me a burden on my family. Which ties back into the... He doesn't have a lot of adventures, because this is literally a line in his paladin code is, I don't want to leave. If I have to, I make sure my home is taken care of before I do. But I don't want to.
Yeah. And this is where I wanted to go back to that pin at the very top of the episode we talked about when it comes to Emily's character to Freya. Because even though we mentioned here that he produces very few adventurers, and even his paladin code says, I don't wanna, even if I have to, I don't wanna. There is a passage in here that I found really super interesting, and I was wondering if this is something that inspired Freya, because it says here, quote, "Every few years the church encourages young priests to set out from the community in search of news, seeds for new crops, alternate techniques for animal husbandry, and other useful new skills that can aid their home villages." And I was wondering because you talked about how Freya went out to, as a midwife to help women and children, and if that was kind of the thrust, and if that was an inspiration at all.
Yeah, that was definitely part of it. As we've talked about, it's very, your family, your community focused, but to have an adventure, to go on an adventure, you need to leave and go do stuff. So that was definitely, once she had left her family, she was then learning more and going to help these other communities. And her way of thinking about this was she couldn't have her own family, but she could help these other families grow, and essentially they became kind of like her children. So she couldn't have her own, but she was helping other communities grow and thrive. And so that was still fulfilling some of these tenets, while not being the person that stayed and raised the child the whole time. She was still helping them through that transitionary period, and spreading her knowledge around to other people.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because that's very on point to that part of the passage where it says here that these wandering priests they go out and about, and they find these little villages that need their help, and there's kind of a give and take, because they learn new ways of doing things that they send back to their home community, but they also kind of nurture a new community, because they generally stay in these new villages and they bring their breadth of knowledge, and they bring their specialties and what they know and their expertise to that village, and from there kind of grows, and then eventually they'll send more young priests and priestesses out, and so on and so forth. So I always thought that, and that's if you did want to play, even though Erastil has very few adventurers, if you did want to play one, that would be the perfect way to do it, is to be one of these young Erastilians that's sent out from your community to, go find new ways of doing X. Whatever it is that your character is, whether they're a druid or a priest or a fighter or, what have you.
Yeah, it's also an interesting story arc that you can have with your character too, that they've left their family, they're sharing this new knowledge or they're gaining new knowledge, but maybe they have the chance to go back. And what choice do they make? So there's some interesting story aspects you can tie in with a character that's so focused on family and their community that gives a little bit more tension to the story.
Right. And then you could also leave that to your DM. To your GM. What does your GM want to do with your community back home? Could they weave it into the story? Does something happen to your community where you do need to go back and you bring your party back with you? There's a lot there that you could do. Yeah.
It's always dangerous giving yourself a family in an adventure because
that's true.
You have people that can be used against you, but it does help enrich the story.
We can't all be the orphans. Because then Cori will make an orphanage and burn it to the ground.
You do something one time. I guess I've done it twice now, but...
That's a lot of orphanages to burn. Those poor children.
We've already gone over the holy text, but yeah, Emily's already kind of gone over it. It is called the Parables of Erastil, and as Emily said, it is just a bunch of homilies.
A farmer's almanac.
That is a farmer's almanac. It is different community to community based off of what your community is. So if you live in a very arid region, you're probably not, your version of the Parables of Erastil is not really going to care about, swampland growing. So you won't have those passages in it. And
you'll
so
have olive trees.
Yep. So, but for the most part, but the Parables of Erastil are the Parables of Erastil. It's not like, it is a book. It's not, quotes on human skin or a talking skull or a placard in a bar.
Or 2 scrolls, or 8 scrolls. 8 scrolls.
Or 8 scrolls, or, yeah. Or whatever else we've had so far. But yeah. Relationships with other religions. As we kind of talked about, he is very set in his ways, and for that reason, he is often criticized by the other deities. But that being said, he does have some relations with a few that are mentioned here in the texts. Abadar's the first one that's mentioned, and they do mention that he does view Abadar as a good dude, but mostly because they both have that sense of law and order. To Cori's point, he doesn't really care about Abadar's kind of egotism and pomp and pompous attitude. And he also doesn't really care about cities. But
yeah,
the whole law and order aspect of Abadar, he does agree with. So
I like that he thinks that Abadar is just a good lad who's lost his way, is kind of how it comes across.
yeah. Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, we got to remember he's one of the oldest gods. So I guess other than maybe what Pharasma, Torag,
Desna, Sarenrae.
Desna, and Sarenrae, and I guess
Like-
Rovagug.
Shaylin and Dalbral were also around back then, but like he's one of the ones that took care of Rovagug. So like he's been around for a long time.
Yeah. Now here's the thing that I found interesting about Torag.
You
They say here, yeah, me? Dwarves? What? They say here in the text that Erastil appreciates Torag's work, and especially his dedication to craftsmanship and clans and families. But their mutual respect, and this made me laugh so much when I read this. Their mutual respect is nothing more than two old men nodding at each other across a tap room. And that's about it. That's about all they give each other. It's just a curt nod, no words. That's it. Which I found fascinating because I could have sworn there was another text that said that they were buddy-buddy. And I can't remember where that was.
It definitely seems fitting for kind of a grumpy old man to acknowledge, you're doing okay, but not close enough to get along.
Yeah.
and then a lot of his other relations with deities boil down to, I wish they would just settle down and find someone.
Yeah, this whole I wanted to dig into this thing with Desna with you, Cori. Cuz I was kind of taken aback by it. Especially this first sentence. Erastil's paternal affection for Desna is real, but distant and tinged with slight sadness. So that one kind of took me aback. I was like, wait, am I missing something completely here? Like, I don't get it. Like, why is he sad about Desna?
Because she's too chaotic. That is 100% of the reason, is because she is prone to flights of fancy and does not settle down and find someone. And like this is one of the things that was softened in Inner Sea Gods. When he talked about Desna in the Kingmaker article, it was a lot worse.
Oh, really? Okay.
But it 100% boils down to she's too chaotic for him, and he wishes she would just settle down and become a little more neutral.
Okay.
To me, it kind of sounds like when your parent is not mad at you, they're just disappointed in your life choices.
Mm-hmm.
If he's so stubborn and, strict about this is the way things should be done, if you're not doing them that way, doesn't quite fit in with his view.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah. And then we have Shaylin, who he supports, and he has a lot more patience for, because she's the goddess of love and marriage, but she's also the goddess of art. And so he's like,
I wish you'd find better things to do with your time. Also, settle down with someone.
basically be just like him.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. They do say that she does reach out to him quite a bit to have him lead her to new vistas for her to paint. So because he knows all the really pretty places. So he takes her to really cool places and at cool times of day for her to paint, and then we get to Rovagug. Yeah, so he was there during the Battle of Rovagug.
Yeah, his role isn't really expanded upon, but he was there.
I'm guessing he was the one who tracked him down, maybe? But I don't know why you'd need to track Rovagug. Because dude's what, like an 8-mile long snake worm spike thing? It's kind of hard to miss.
Yeah. Like, it doesn't really ever expand on how he was involved. We just know he was there because he's been there for that long.
Yeah.
So let's see.
Right. We kind of already went over his realm. You want to go over aphorisms?
Yeah. His aphorisms, like a lot of his theology, are short and sweet and really to the point, and you can really gather what they are, what their meaning is without it really being described. The first is never trust a fool. Pretty self-explanatory, that one. Nothing is more satisfying than the fruits of a day's labor. Again, really self-explanatory and really in line with all of his other teachings. And then the last one he has is the hardest task becomes easy with a friend, which touches upon the community aspect of his teachings and how pitching in together you can make things easier on everyone. God of
I like
socialism.
that one a lot. I really do like that one a lot, that last one.
Mm-hmm.
Even the hardest task is made easier with a friend. That's nice. Do you have the boons and curses up at all, Emily?
Yeah, I do. So Erastil's minor boon is he shares his bounty as long as you work for it. Whenever you roll a critical failure at a check to subsist in the wild, you get a failure instead. It could definitely be helpful.
I don't even know what the critical failure effect for subsist is. I need to look that up now.
It doesn't come up all that often.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's going to be coming up very quickly in my
QFF?
Yeah, Frozen Flame. Okay. Yeah, oh wow. Okay, that is good because critical failure, you attract trouble, eat something you shouldn't, or otherwise worsen your situation. You take a -2 penalty to subsist for 1 week. Okay, that's really good then. That's a lot better than I thought.
Yeah, that's serious.
Shit, I mean, you might even need that in Skulls and Shackles if that might come to it.
Oh yeah. I don't think our pirate adventurers are going to get along so well with Erastil.
No, but I'm just saying. I'm just saying, subsisting is.
Yes, yeah, that definitely could come up if we're marooned somewhere. The moderate boon is you share Erastil's sharp eye, allowing you to use a longbow in any situation. When you attack with a longbow, you can ignore the longbow's volley trait, and longbows have double the normal range increment to you.
Holy cow, that's really good. Oh, wow.
It makes it much more versatile.
Yeah. That's really good, especially because that lets you use a longbow in dungeons.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, those
Get
tight
on Deadeye's
spaces.
good side.
The major boon is you become a friend to the land. You can cast Speak with Plants as a divine innate spell. When you are in a healthy natural environment, the land sustains you without need for food or drink. You can cast the Commune with Nature ritual without any secondary casters or secondary checks.
Wow.
Oh, that's awesome. That is really cool. I tried doing the legendary religion skill in one of Cori's games. I didn't make my check, unfortunately, so Cori did not have to talk to me as my god. That was in Grey Death.
All right, and then on to the curses. So if you make Erastil angry, the minor curse is he curses your table and punishes you for relying on others' hard work. Any food you didn't grow, gather, or otherwise harvest yourself tastes like ash and leaves you fatigued.
Oh, that's rough. That's the minor?
That's minor.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah, you'd have to spend so much more time gathering food. You can actually eat it and enjoy it.
You might even be fatigued from having to gather new food.
Yeah. That's a tough cycle to break. But it can get worse. The moderate curse is Erastil's beasts take a dislike to you. Animals' attitude toward you are one category worse, so friendly instead of helpful, indifferent instead of friendly, and so on.
Oof.
That sucks. Especially if you have an animal companion.
Yeah. And any interaction with an animal is going to be more difficult to try to work your way out without a combat.
Yeah. Oh, man.
The major curse is Erastil leaves you unable to have children or otherwise reproduce or propagate or, whatever manner it is. This curse also affects your livestock, pets, and crops.
Oh.
Wow.
So if you don't care
can't-
that much about having children, it affects a lot of other things as well.
Yeah. So yeah, you just can't grow anything. Oh, by the way, yeah, your cows can't produce milk. You can't have chickens. You can't have eggs. You can't have. Oh, that is. Yeah, you're just gonna starve. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Oof. All right. Yeah. Cool. Not so much.
All right. And since Mike's not here to talk about the planar allies, I guess I will do that.
Yeah, go for it.
He has a few. He has Aranjin, who is a ruby-toned heavy horse that understands common but does not speak. Blackfeather, who is an eagle archer that has the power of shapeshifting. Proud Snoot, who is a divine boar.
I love that name.
Or no, Proud Snout. Sorry, not Snoot. I'm gonna call him Snoot anyway.
I like it better.
Yeah. Scorched Bark. The minion is a young arboreal regent who possesses a rather brash temperament. And then his herald is the grim white stag. It appears as a gigantic white stag with branches in place of antlers and vines wrapping around its legs.
Oh, cool. I do have to, one quick addition. Apparently, Orangan is said to be the resurrected spirit of a paladin. The resurrected spirit of the paladin Jadis Vaughn's equally heroic and storied mount. Orangan appears to be the servant. Appears when servants of Erastil most need aid, carrying the lost out of labyrinthine forests, and saving the wagons of desperately stuck pioneers from hidden bogs. So it is the mount of one of Erastil's paladins. That's kind of cool. I like that.
Sadly, there's not a paragraph on Proud Snoot.
Oh. We'll have to come up with a good story for him.
Proud Snoot. Yeah, listeners, if you have a story about Proud Snoot, hit us up. Let us know what your story would be for Proud Snoot's back story. I said story too many times. Anything else? Anything else that we missed? Anything else we wanted to talk about?
Actually, we didn't touch on holidays yet.
Oh, shoot. You're right. Holidays. Yeah, we talked about his month being in the middle of summer, but we didn't go over holidays. That's right.
And that's probably because he doesn't have a whole lot of respect for holidays, because again, anytime you're celebrating his time, you could have been working. So really, he only has one holiday, and that is on Erastil 3, which puts it very close to the patriotic holidays that we have in both America and Canada, one of which falls on Erastil 1 and the other on Erastil 4. So just a common time to celebrate in the middle of summer, and that is Archer Fest. Otherwise, the only thing he celebrates are the planting at the spring equinox and the harvest at the fall equinox. Otherwise, you should be working.
Yeah, so Archer Feast has day of feasting, fun, and relaxation. Villages hold archery and stone throwing contests. Ranchers rope and trade calves and lambs, and young people ask permission to wed. Cider is served cold during the day and hot at night, and at sundown, an animal is offered to the god, and everyone in the community eats a piece to share in the god's blessing. So it's kind of a feasting holiday, and kind of like how the July 1st and 4th are for Canadians and Americans anyway. Which
yeah, I wonder where inspiration for that holiday came from.
Yeah, instead of archery, we just kind of blow up miniature explosives. Colorful miniature explosives.
Yeah, that would probably be a little too out there for Erastil. Too exciting.
Yeah, you can't be an alchemist and follower of Erastil. It's too much. Yeah, normally we would have a spoiler corner, but as we've gone over, there's not a whole lot to talk about for Erastil. He doesn't really intervene much, so there's not much to talk about. We kind of went over this before we started recording. There's mention of Erastil in Iron Gods because there's one town that's an Erastilian town.
There is a temple that you clean up in Kingmaker from my experience there. And there's the Grimwhite Stag, or not Grimwhite Stag, the Stag King's Bride side quest in Wrath of the Righteous, where you you find the tomb of the Delamar who wrote that heretical text. But other than that, there's not a whole lot of spoilery stuff for Old Deadeye.
Yeah. Unless you want to go and listen to the story of the brave follower Freya on Carrion Crown in Hideous Laughter's version of Carrion Crown.
Yeah, I definitely was able to tease her character a little bit here, but there's still a lot more to her, and she grows and develops with the party, so a lot more to learn there.
One of
Yeah,
my
but other
favorite
than
characters
that-
of that campaign, which is saying a lot because I love almost everyone in it. So,
Oh, wow, thank you. That means a lot. She was a really fun character to come up with and play and see her story arc. I was happy with where she was able to go. And it means a lot that somebody else saw that too.
I like Emily's evil character.
well, yeah.
She's pretty fun too. A little more fun, actually, I would say.
Yeah. So no spoiler corner this month. And as far as teasing next month's deity, can't really help you out there. We're still trying to get a guest because we're kind of running low. I think there's only 6 more of the core 20 left. So not a whole lot, and then we're going to be wrapped up. We're going to do a handful of non-core 20 deities. So every one of our guests that we've had on will be offered a chance to come back on and speak to their favorite non-core 20 deity. So we will have some more deity episodes. So Alex has already claimed that he's going to come back on to talk about the great old ones, and Griff is going to come back on to talk about Xiphus, and Steve is going to come back on to talk about Eridan. Just to tease a couple. But as far as the next episodes, we not exactly sure yet. So when I find out, I'll let people know in the Discord. So if you want to join the 25 North Discord, I'll let people know as soon as I know. But other than that, anything else that we want to mention or talk about before we do some outros? Some shaking of the heads. All right. Emily, where can our listeners follow you and find you?
Yeah, well, for Hideous Laughter content, let me pull up our actual tags. On Instagram, you can find us at Hideous Laughter Pod. On the social media platform previously known as Twitter, you can find us at Laughter Hideous. And then we do have a website if you want to get more information on all of our campaigns and more information on us. And you can find that at hideouslaughterpodcast.com.
Awesome. Cori?
You can find me on the website formerly known as Twitter under Cori Murray 21. You can find my writing at Women Write About Comics and SideQuest. You can find me occasionally here on this feed on the 50 North podcast when we do Goblin Shenanigans as the Impeccable GWOW. And then, of course,
Which
here
we
with you
still-
every month.
Which we still are. There's still going to be more. We're just getting through some scheduling issues. Now that the holidays are over, though, I'm hoping that we can actually get the next part of the Goblin campaign up and running. So. And I do need to get Cori back on as Bismara. I have a script written up. We just need to get that scheduled too. As far as me, you're here. You know who I am. if you're listening to this, you know what 25 North is. If you don't know, we got a BlueSky. You can find us there. And we recently changed our Patreon tiers. So we only have 2 now. They're both pay what you want, 1 and up. You can submit $1 and up, you can submit hero points. $5 and up, you get early access to all of our content. Support us at however much you can. This is how we keep shows like this and the main feed alive. It's through the generous offers that you and listeners like you are able to do. And if you can't support us, that's no problem. Just share this content with whoever you think would like it. Word of mouth is the best way to get new listeners, and we appreciate it. So without further ado, and that's all we got for you, and we'll be back next month with another deity. So we'll see you later.
Goodbye, everyone.